The idea for this, what we've called the Power Hour, it's kindly sponsored by Inmarsat, is what we wrote down, and I think it's going to sort of change quite a lot from what we initially wrote down, but lots of paper getting in the way. But anyway, how connectivity at sea is driving digitalisation, decarbonisation and crew welfare. Where we're at and where we're headed when it comes to connected vessels. So I woke up this morning and September 29th, oh, hold on a moment. My email box was rammed with stuff from the IMO, Intermanager, tons of people. It's not Day of the Seafarer, but it is World Maritime Day. And the theme for World Maritime Day this year is new technologies for greener shipping. I thought, well, this is perfect. This is going to be a brilliant way to kind of introduce what we're going to be talking about in this session and perhaps in other sessions later on. So we've written about it on our site today. And in fact, within the report about this theme, new technologies for greener shipping, we discussed a report that was published by Inmarsat and Thetis, a UK consultancy, in June this year, that looked at how seafarers are looking at all this new tech that's being created, and they're kind of questioning whether there is the requisite seafarer input in a lot of the stuff that is coming on board. I mean, this is a gripe that has been going on for decades, but I think it's getting more serious now. The report said that 2 in 5 crew members working with digital technology at sea today point to shortcomings in systems design and lack of user friendliness. So I think if we're going to start with this discussion, we're going to start it at sea. We're going to start it with the seafarers and how to ensure that what we are putting on ships is actually of use, easy to use, and is being kind of understood and appreciated by those at sea. I'm going to quickly tell you who we've got on our panel before I carry on. On my very far left, it's Morten Lind-Olsen from Dualog. Next to him is Vinod from OSM. Then we have Sanjay Kuttan from the Global Centre for Maritime Decarbonisation. And to my immediate left is Gert-Jan Panken from Inmarsat. So, let's get this underway. Long intro, I'll stop talking. Vinod, there's all this stuff that's coming on to ships. You can see that there is clearly quite a lot of disquiet, that perhaps it's not being designed with the seafarer in mind. How do you allay these fears? What do you do?
I mean, let's put it this way, and I think I would like to start this way. We're talking a lot about digitalization and decarbonization. I think the entire industry, the entire globe is talking about it. Are we really talking about seafarers here? Right? Because anywhere in the discussion, I really don't see the seafarer in it right at this stage. We're talking about technology, we're talking about how things will go in the future, what we will do, putting these tools on board. But are we really doing it for the seafarer out there? Right? Are they part of this? Are they really getting a say in it? And what benefits do they get out of it? So as much as we're driving this thing, the STCW has not changed much. The conventions have not changed much. The trainings have not changed much. So now you're going to have masters and chief engineers and people on board who are going to be given all these great tools without much training in them. So how do you expect them to train it? You can imagine having a new Boeing with a pilot who's never seen it before. So I don't want to be on that aircraft.
Morten, what do you have to say on that topic?
Yeah, you mentioned the word
you
user.
Got it.
Sorry.
There we go. Should be on.
Yeah, it's on. Or it's not.
There you go.
Okay.
Swap.
Thank you. You mentioned the word user friendliness. So I think you could divide this in the crew's ability to operate whatever is the commercial system on board, and the other thing is of course the welfare thing, what kind of personal access they have. So from me following this industry, and I'm a vendor, I'm not a ship's guy, so crew welfare was quite high on the agenda when VSAT and internet came around, introduced to the shipping industry. So I think crew welfare was the driver. Then lately it's more going in the direction of improved vessel performance, improvement of business, but still I can't see the crew welfare or the crew perspective being lost in this. You're adding more and more connectivity, which I'm sure you're coming back to. So this user friendliness to me got me a little bit puzzled if that is kind of like Wi-Fi inside. Is it accessible? Because you have this political view. Should the crew be able to access internet all the time? And there's a few things, but from a vendor point of view, from a technological point of view, you can offer anything that the bandwidth can offer. So if they want to watch live streaming videos, it's not possible these days. But other than that, they can communicate whatever their company allows. So I'm not so sure if I quite understand what's meant by the user friendliness.
Gert, you.
Yeah, well,
Gert is a producer of the report, so he will know.
no, well, first and foremost, that streaming is possible. Today's technology allows with broadband internet connections to do that. But I think there is indeed, as Morten correctly pointed out, there's two angles to this. There is the angle of crew welfare, and I think there the crew is not really struggling to find their ways to their devices. What we see is that if we analyze the traffic, still 60 to 80% is crew related, so that clearly states that the crew finds their way into connectivity. Then there is of course more the ship operations side, where probably there is still work to be done. I can't comment on that because that's not my domain. But what we indeed see from a crew welfare perspective is that crew welfare also in COVID and even before has accelerated. Crew retention, crew welfare becomes really high on the agenda and still is high on the agenda, because if we can't facilitate the crew to basically work on the vessels which we have, then the vessels are not going to operate. So to keep that crew at the center of what we do is really important. And that's where Inmarsat, luckily, we try to listen to the crew. You mentioned that 2 out of 5 crew members mentioned that they have not been listened into. Well, the report which we published actually is with the crew. What are your needs? How do you maintain your mental safety, but also your social engagements, and against that input we try to develop services which keep the crew connected, safe and secure.
Okay, so let's just take this on to the next part of the discussion where we're going, and trying to define what a connected vessel ultimately is, and how far down the track we are in this. I don't know, Gert, would you like to start with that one?
Yeah, I think it's an excellent question. We talked about connected shipping or smart shipping for probably the last 10 years. From an Inmarsat perspective, a connected vessel is the same as a connected office. With the assets which we run on a vessel, the value of it, and the teams working on the ship, you should not actually differentiate anymore between a vessel, an offshore and an onshore setup. So I think what we as an industry, from a communication perspective, try to do is to really get that vessel embedded in your standard corporate IT setup. And I think if we are there, where you don't have to have specialized or maritime specific settings, then you are in a situation that you can call a connected vessel a remote office. And I think that's the migration which we are pushing for, and through really solid standard satellite communication services, I think we're getting there.
Okay, but getting there, how far down the track are we talking till we are there?
Oh well, it's a good question. I mean, you always have there is a restriction with respect to the size of the pipe you can get to a vessel. I mean, it's simply a fact that the satellites are far out. So there are some restrictions with respect to bandwidth. But if you look at the more advanced operators, yes, they are running and deploying standard ERP services. They have cloud-based services. They do remote videos. So I think we're really getting very close to a connected vessel. Actually, there are connected vessels. The question is, how much do you as an operator want to spend on that connectivity? And I think that's where, and we'll probably talk about that later, connectivity in the past has always been seen as a cost, and I think what it is, it's an investment in operational efficiency.
We're getting to that point, you hold on.
I'll hold that.
Morten, connected vessels, give us your take on that.
Sorry. I think the connected vessels, it's a question of definition. Technology-wise, for sure, we are able to make any connected vessels. My company has been working with NYK in Tokyo for a while, actually 3-4 years, and they kind of started in the other end, they wanted to achieve on the shore side as owners and managers and a part of a community. So on that respect, they define what they need. And they have kind of approached this via collaboration, standards, ownership of data, which of course is far beyond technology. This is more how the business want to collaborate. So in a way, I think we as technology providers can offer most things that it takes to put together a connected or integrated ship. So that's in place. But when it comes to the decision to actually make it happen, if you make a kind of comparison to electronic banking, I think shipping has slowly started to install ATMs.
Okay, yeah. Slowly. Okay, Vinod, the OSM view on this?
I'll go back to my experience, right? I mean, I'm a seafarer by heart, and I still think I'm a seafarer. I mean, my initial days at sea was Port Kelang radio, this is Victor 7 Hotel, and then you wanted to make a phone call. That was basically shipping at that time. So were we connected at that time? Yes, I mean, it's definition of connection. We were connected in specific locations at specific periods. I think in that term, shipping has grown way ahead. People have access to emails. Again, I come back, like I said, I'm a seafarer at heart, so crew welfare. I think connection out there is very important for crew welfare. And if you tackle crew welfare and the crew on board, I think a lot of other things fall in place automatically, right, on what we're trying to do from the shore side. So one is that on connectivity has improved. Has it reached the same levels as what we have sitting here in this office space? Or no, we're quite a bit away from it. Again, in connectivity at sea, I think there are some areas of the world where, and Inmarsat can vouch for that the connectivity and the bandwidths and the speeds are way better. But there are some areas in the world when you're operating ocean-going ships where connectivity is poor, and you go to backup systems where bandwidth start dropping, and then it becomes a little more of an issue. And when you talk about crew who want to be connected, shipping is 24/7 and global. It cannot be related to certain segments and certain locations and things. So I would like to see connectivity from a management setup a little more broader.
So it is a theme. For me, actually, the question is not so much can it be with or without digitalization, because I think digitalization is a fact. So the fact that there is now a trend of getting more connected is unstoppable, and I think that indeed also in that context, decarbonization is one of the themes which can benefit from it. You rightly stated about training. We talk about compliancy. You can't really do that without having some kind of relation back to the other side of the world, and that's where, of course, the communication element comes into play. So I think it's a combination of, on one hand, you have a driver with respect to compliancy, you have regulations. In order to bring it all together, there is a moment where it comes either to the cloud or it comes back to shore, and for that, communication is actually a real big enabler.
If anyone has any questions at this point, raise a hand or we'll carry on. I think we do this at every forum, and as the years go by, it's been 3 years since we've asked the question, but people always moan about shipping. Oh, it's so far behind other industries when it comes to digitalization, and yet the amount of stuff that I find myself writing day in, day out, the amount of press releases I often delete, but I mean, I am bombarded with stuff. Does this perception that shipping is still way behind other industries still hold true, or has it caught up? Is it ahead in some ways? I don't know. Who would like to take that? Morten, maybe you go first.
Okay, again, I'm not kind of so much into shipping, but I think this is also a matter of definitions. So a ship today, a new built ship, is for sure digital in all respects. You can take out as much information as you like digitally, but putting it together and making sense and good decisions of that's a different thing. And shipping are behind on that level. So in the terrestrial world, most businesses kind of take advantage of new way of thinking, like AI and things like that. So in that respect, shipping is behind. But as mentioned here, also connectivity, of course, is a challenge that's not only due to shipping, but actually what's available. But I think the digital ship is completely available. Everything on board is today in a digital format. So it's just putting the pieces together. That's the bigger challenge right now, I think. And that also, of course, goes to this concept of ship owning and ship management. So as a provider, I very often discover that ship owners like things to happen, and then when they negotiate contracts with the ship managers, they don't put a cent into kind of doing things to that. So that's still a task that the industry needs to deal with. So I often say you can't cost save yourself into digitalization. That's not possible. Somehow you need to invest money, competence, focus.
We're going to come to that sort of mindset problem a bit later on, but from a ship manager's point of view, what's your take?
I think the shipping industry has made a lot of progress. I mean, if you see the kind of ships that were built, it's enormously developed. I mean, if you go onto a modern day bridge compared to the one 15 years back, there's so much of data out there. Connectivity still an issue, because you're talking about 3/4 the world covered with water and 1/4 with it, but all the connectivity, all the things are being done more for land-based things. So if the same kind of focus went out to ships and the same kind of drive as we have today keeps going, it's again on what benefits the industry, right? It's today when we started talking about global warming, and people have actually seen, I think we're 50, 100 years late in starting this process on global warming, and I think we've lost a lot of battle out there. But it's good we started, better late than never. So shipping has changed. I think there's been a lot more digitalization. I mean, let's look at it from, again, I'll sound old, but when the days of olden days when you had sea burials and people at sea, today you're talking about a day when you've got telemedical advice available. And the benefit of that as crew welfare and crew thing is so very good. So you have a hospital, just to put it in perspective, you have a seafarer joining, he does his entire medical history connected up and stored in a database, he goes on board a ship, he ends up with a medical issue. It's all connected. It's so very good today. So the minute he has an issue, you have his entire medical history, you have it. There are doctors online, you have telemedical advice, you can do it by video, you can actually show the patient. So if connectivity is not going, and I would like to challenge where people say shipping is not connected today.
I'm going to throw this one out to Peter in the back, near the back row, and we are without a microphone, so you will have to speak nice and loudly, which isn't a problem for you.
Yeah, no, it is not. Well, telemedical is a good thing, but then a lot of regulations are still far behind. You know, you look at the medical chest on board; it's still 50 years old, right? It doesn't look after women. It doesn't look after the additional chances that we have through modern medical procedures, right? So that's where I'm saying shipping is still lagging behind in certain ways. And coming back to the connectivity, most of it is still related to cost, right? I'm really thrilled to see that new players are coming into the market. Sorry, Inmarsat.
We like competition.
Yeah, and I know we will not come down to land-based cost, but I would say with every $1,000 less a month, the number of services that are being employed will increase, right? And we also have to keep in mind that in times of catastrophic crew change situations, even before, 70 to 80% of the bandwidth was taken by Facebook and Instagram, right? So. And in these times, we even have to be more mindful of this. And there's still a fair amount of greed with ship owners, particularly from certain countries, you know, to only give minimum bandwidth to the people. And that is, for a ship manager, one of our biggest challenges. We have now increased our VSAT coverage to more than 90%. That is coming from 60% 4 or 5 years ago, but the data quantity is still too limited in our we have a huge battle with our owners to make them understand that they should pay a couple of $1,000s, which they have to today. But of course, our wish is that this comes down with competition. Maybe if it also may affect your R&D budget. But I think it's an absolutely necessary thing. If I may add one more thing regarding training, I still think also that not only the fact that we need training has to be addressed, but also that the new generation of seafarers has a different way to process information. I don't want to call them the TikTok generation, but the attention span is certainly below 1 hour. And so gamified things and making things interesting. You mentioned VR. I did a VR training for LNG bunkering. It was fantastic. I will never forget every move or any move. If you read it in a multiple choice test, I don't think that you have a similar experience.
Immediately to your left is Ronnie. I'm going to put you on the spot. So this question that we were talking about shipping compared to other industries, how far along it is on the whole digitalisation path. You're a good person to give your thoughts on that. Give us, what's your take?
Here already that we have come much further than we were, and it's been driven by things. I agree with Peter's point as well, that I think the main issue is not connectivity. Connectivity is there, and it's getting better and better. It's more about the willingness to actually pay for it. And the amount of data that you need to take off the vessel is still quite limited. Mostly, as Peter also pointed out, this is eaten up to a large degree by giving the crew some of that onboard welfare aspect that you would expect to have in a land-based job. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to keep them at sea at all. So I think we are slowly catching up, but there are a lot of challenges. And I think through connectivity, and of course, us as Scanridge, we provide the onboard side of the connectivity, not the ship-to-shore side. But I think the more data you can get out that you can make sense of and make use of in a simpler and easier way, the better you can also make decisions for anything relating to performance, or also coming into the decarbonisation part of the discussion, that when you have more of the information of things in real time with that connectivity that you will have to pay for, or by hopefully in the future a bit less, in terms of the payment, then you will be able to make better decisions and also get closer to the goal of both improving crew welfare and also reducing your carbon emissions or your impact. But we are moving in the right direction, but it could pick up the pace even a bit more.
Anit, what have you got to say on the matter?
Yeah, so I think it was a very interesting discussion so far. Thank you so much for that. Most of the discussions have been from the cost perspective. I'm kind of looking at it from a revenue perspective as to people are going to incur all this money. What is it going to give them in return? And there is no way for a charterer or a counterparty to be kind of aware of the benefit of hiring a smart ship compared to not hiring a smart ship, let's put it that way. In order for that to happen, there needs to be a much greater awareness of how do you actually benchmark or even publicize this aspect of what is going to actually be on the table by choosing this vessel compared to another ship. That awareness factor is extremely low when it comes to the commercial side of the things, which I think is the next stage which has to really come up. And I don't know what views the panel has on this, because in my mind, in order to monetize this, you need to be able to actually go to the customer and say, this is what you're going to get if you actually go with a ship which is having these hallmarks, while this ones don't have those hallmarks. Obviously you lose out on these things. Unless you can get the customers up there, you will not be able to succeed in getting that cost to be justified by the owners and operators. Yeah.
Right behind you, Johan, and then and just to say, it's as if you were reading my notes, because that's the next question that I was going to be asking. But Johan.
And I was just wondering as well for the panel, right? I mean, we talked about STCW. I mean, that is the bare minimum of training, right? And you talk about all these new fuels, or IMO going to be tagging along there, right? Because normally they are 3 or 4 or 5 years behind us. So again, for me, when you talk about the new fuels, I mean, that is not regulated in the STCW, right? As far as I know.
No, there are papers being released.
Papers, I have read all of them. But again, right? So for me, the level of STCW is not going to be good enough. Not even now. But imagine in 3-4 years when you have ammonia fuel engines, right? The STCW is just the bare minimum, and the training needs to be much more than that. And for me, I also think we talk about the wrong thing here. For me, it's again engagement. We need the crew to engage with the training. That we have to. I mean, you said it, Peter, right? I mean, digital, VR, whatever it is.
Gamification.
I mean, all of that. But it's the engagement that is going to win. The connectivity is irrelevant. If you don't have the engagement from the crew, you will never succeed.
Right, we've got lots of different things to take on, and let's start with what Panken was saying. Is it's not a cost, but ultimately a saving. That kind of that angle, and then we'll move on to what Johan was saying later on. Let's start with Gert first.
Well, I think it's the theme which we are discussing here about is it worth? And I think it is. I also was quite triggered by the question about costs and willingness to pay, and I think that's spot on. From a technology perspective, we can do whatever we can. But if there is no willingness to pay, and if people still perceive connectivity as being expensive, then I think we are in the completely wrong track. Because if the savings you can make by having an investment in connectivity is going to save you on fuel consumption, it's going to save you on maintenance, if you're going to make your crew more happy, then I think it's a no-brainer. Also, interesting to share that 8 years ago, we talked about 200 megabytes of communication going through your pipes for a few $1,000. Today, 5-6 years later, we're talking about an average of 200 gigabytes for the same amount of money. And then people keep on saying it's so expensive. Well, I landed in Singapore earlier this week, and I got a text message saying, welcome to Singapore, you're now paying $2 per megabyte roaming fees. So what is expensive? I mean, we are not considering our mobile usage. It's becoming a business need. So I think really the conversation is and rightfully shifting from cost into benefit. And then I think the debate about connectivity and associated costs becomes actually irrelevant. It is really the business case behind it.
But getting that business case across is very difficult to ship owners, or not?
No, not really, because they start to see the benefits. Indeed, talking about preventive maintenance calls, talking about crew welfare, talking about remote health checks, talking about VR. I think the themes which we discuss here are themes which my team is talking to their customers every single day.
Yes.
So I don't think it is very difficult to convince. It is, and I think Morten was referring to this as well. It's the dynamic between the owner and the manager which sometimes makes it a bit of a challenge. How to convince the owner. Yeah, the owner might have different drivers than the manager, and they might have different incentives as well. So I think that's a theme which we need to solve as an industry.
Well, I'll come for more questions in a moment. First I'm going to go to Vinod, and then I'm going to go to Sanjay. So Vinod first responding, and then Sanjay to what Johan was saying about training and fuels.
Puneet's question, I think he's spot on. We need to show an owner or a charterer the bottom line, right? Where is the P&L going to be? I mean, that's how the world works. I mean, when you get into an airline, the air hostess is not in love with you to make sure that you wear your safety belt on. But the fact is, it's safety. It's the core of their business. So a guy gets injured, it's going to hit their bottom P&L. So that's what. So safety, as much as we say safety is paramount, it's also to do with P&L, because one incident costs. So that I get. But one thing which I challenge on that is, you can, and in OSM, which is all about people, and I really like that tagline of mine, you can never put a cost to see what it invests in people, right? What we're doing right now, what we're talking to people, this investment, this cost cannot be put in a balance sheet. That will come with time, and that goes straight on to Johan's question on training, right? Training effectiveness will be seen in period of time, but to put it in a document today and show an owner what you will get out of it is very, very difficult. Coming back to your question on when we have discussions with managers and with charters and with owners, they say, so how much does it benefit us? 5%? 10%? I'm sorry, mate, I can't tell you that, because that's something you do with time when you get in. You can show how much digitalization and these things can save you, but you can't really show how much investment in people will end up. But I can tell you, they're going to be much better than digitalization numbers. The investment in people, if you get people to...
I just wanted to add one thing. The first step can at least be to try and make people aware that this vessel is a smart ship.
Sure, yeah.
The vessel descriptions today that I see are still the same description that I've seen for the last
15 years, and that's why I hope people like OTG and the platforms do go into that VR and AR training. And he said it spot on. You do one of those trainings on VR, it's great. And I thought that was fantastic till I saw one on AR, and I said, hell, this is even better. Yeah, so that's
Sanjay.
And at the risk of
at the risk of repeating all the good points, I would first address Punit's point, which is very important, and I was thinking about it as the conversation was going back and forth. I think it's a question of value proposition, right? It's not a question of price. I think people buy expensive handbags and buy cheap handbags, right? It's a question of value proposition. And I think there are 4 areas that we always should be cognizant about when we think about the price of connectivity, right? One is the impact it has in our journey on the environment front. That needs to be clearly articulated because there is pressure to be more environmentally friendly. The second point is around reliability and safety. The better you have a handle on reliability of your vessels, your insurance premiums should come down, right? The more unreliable your ships are, the insurance premiums will go up. So the reliability and safety is also a very important element in that value proposition on digitalization connectivity. The other one is compliance. It is about the license to operate. If you have to comply, your ship can only make money if it's sailing. If it's stranded in a port and arrested, you cannot make money. So how does this technology allow you to ensure you're in full compliance and then therefore can make money? Then the last value proposition, you add this up, will come down to your profit and loss. But I think to be very clear of the value proposition of the price you're paying for connectivity and the price you're paying for digitalization is very important. The other point I want to make on training, I agree, right? We need to make sure that the standards are proliferated through IMO, it's fully adopted by all the different bodies. And I think from that perspective, we at GCMD, even when we come up with this competency framework, we will take it and engage with all the necessary parties to make sure it's more of a global footprint. And we are fortunate that MPA is one of our partners in our organization, and we will leverage that to the hilt to make sure that it becomes more accepted around the world. And we're working with the likes of SGMF, and so we'll see how we can not be a GCMD training module. It's supposed to be a global maritime training module.
Question from the back.
Yeah, hi everyone. I just want to challenge this as a comment and not really to give my view because I'm not on shipping. But I used to sail with Singapore Navy for 10 years. So I just want to attest to what Johan said about engagement. So if I relate back to the incident that I had during the 911 incident, all of us will like see more of the sea than our families at home. But back then, we made a commitment to ask the Singapore government to have some kind of welfare for us, right? Because back then we don't have any internet, and it works wonders. It raised a lot of our morale during that difficult 2 to 3 years. And how does that happen? Back to the question of cost. If you don't splurge the money, you don't spend the money, and I cannot understand why. Sorry if I say this and to ruffle some feathers, but how can an owner invest in 20-30 million in one vessel and then be so concerned with $2,000 of airtime?
I agree.
It doesn't make sense. And sorry to say this, over the last few years, everyone knows that we have a good market. Bulk containers, everyone, we make 10, 20 folds. PIL make back the money that they have borrowed how many times? But why are we still talking about digitalization when you're talking about a couple of $1,000s? It's time we act and we do something. That's all I want to say. Thanks.
Again, it's like people have been reading my notes.
What makes me hopeful is the ESG reporting. Because now we're all in the 2nd or 3rd year, we can't really do a paper exercise anymore. We have to come up with projects that are measurable and quantifiable. So in that sense, a lot of the crew-related matters will take more importance than the technology. That is my feeling, and hopefully so. So that makes me hopeful that this will develop in the right direction, driven by that effort, because the banks will push us to it anyway. Secondly, industry, we talked about what is really still lacking is standardization in many ways, right? And that is also driven by the inability of us to communicate also within competitors. However, also there are some small beacons of light, for example, Smart Maritime Network, where we're trying to find the USB stick of the industry, we're trying to standardize a Noon report. Standardization will enable also startups and service companies to develop the right services for us, right? And for that we need the connectivity anyway. That's a given. So the standardization has to be further pushed, I would say. And I think the industry is slowly starting to talk and even considering to share data, which was a complete no-no before.
So, yes.
Yeah, just a question sort of related to all this. When we're talking about improving training and these new technologies, new fuels, is it a question of upskilling, or are we looking at a new profile of seafarers or personnel generally?
What's OSM have to say on that one?
The right or the easy answer would be a combination of both. But I would say that I think we're looking at a new skill set. I mean, as much as we want to appreciate it today, I don't think somebody said the TikTok generation, which is spot on that one. As I think we're looking at a new generation of seafarers out there. I think it's going to be a totally different skill set from what it was before. I mean, whether we like it or not, it's going to be that way. I mean, and for traditional people like me, and like that, it might be a big change, but that's where it's going. But I liked what he asked about the 20-30 million, and I think Peter hit it straight on the head. 20-30 million, when they calculated $1,000, they multiplied it into their fleet of ships and the number of days and the years, and then they came out with 2 million, which would still hit their 30 million, right? But I think the banks and the money which is going to go in and questions which are coming from ESG is going to take this away. So now they're going to put in 2-3 million there together with the cost of a ship now for making sure that they do what the ESG they've committed themselves to do. So as much as it, I think this new thing of ESG or sustainability or whatever, which every member of the shipping fraternity needs to do now, I think it's a way in the positive direction.
Hi, this is Captain Amar here. Just to the gentleman first, and then I'll come back to you guys. Digitalization has a double-edged sword, right? And with the armed forces, they really don't recommend them to be on Facebook or TikTok because sensitive information can be stolen. The same thing goes to your side. The owners don't like to see something that's getting gone wrong to be...
As a journalist, I do, though.
But it really, it's not about cost, but it's the other part of it. And with ship managers, I don't know, with a very traditional way of how the seafarer's life is on board, that has not really changed, number of hours or anything. Where are we giving them time to actually spend some time for their own well-being? Most of the training actually are done when they come ashore, which is actually the time when they want to be relaxing with their families and spending time. So when we are thinking about digitalization, seafarers, you have to really think holistically. If you want to give them a time off, you have to think holistically. It's not just cost, it's not just technology, but it's the whole thing. If you want to change shipping, you have to change it fully.
Carl, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I think Peter is right in some of the points he made. I'll share an example, sort of fresh from the trenches, as it were, because the crewing market is insane at the moment. And we had one guy, he received offers from 2 owners, and on one of them, he asked one question: which one do you have internet on board? Right? They both said, oh, we do. Right? And then one of them said, obviously it's payable. And this young man, he looked us straight in the eye after hearing this, and he said, so you're asking me to pay for internet connectivity at my place of work? How many offices does that happen in? So he took the other contract, of course.
I'm going to wrap this up with the final question, which kind of links into a lot of what we've just been discussing the last 10 minutes about how much of an afterthought is crew welfare to ship owners when it comes to the connected vessels argument. I'll start.
I don't think it's an afterthought anymore. I think the example just provided is actually spot on. If you look at retention, if you look at keeping the job of a seafarer interesting, you need to move in a direction that you give connectivity and you give them the opportunity to learn, to give them the opportunity to engage. So I don't think that crew welfare is an afterthought. There might be still some owners who treat it like that, but I don't think that in the long run those owners will be able to attract crew, may retain the crew, and as a result, I think they will. We all human beings, and therefore we all have to adhere to the day and age where we are in. So I don't think it can be an afterthought anymore.
Sanjay, any thoughts on that?
Yes.
I think ESG is going to reduce the corporate slavery that's been in existence for the longest time. And the rights of every individual under the ESG framework is going to be protected. And therefore, you're going to see less and less of this.
And Vinod?
Yeah. I think OSM is the largest crew service provider in the world, 17,000 seafarers, and I think part of it goes back to the 6 GB free data we give to all our seafarers. Yeah, but that's a winner there. I mean, let's be honest about it. If you're able to give that kind of accessibility and to stay connected in today's modern day world is the way to have welfare. Whether it's us sitting in this room or the seafarers at sea, they need to be connected. You have, there were days when people were out at sea and like a good friend said, went out in the Navy and didn't know what was happening, and then you had to have a connection to get to it. In today's world, if you're not connected with your families, then most kids in the old sailing days when the dads came back called them uncle. Yeah, but today at least they know who the dad is. Let's on a lighter note, that's how it used to be. 9 months contract, people went out, never saw their kid, never saw their dad, came back long hair and said, who the hell is this? At least today you have the facility to see them nearly every other day.
Morten, I'm going to give the final words to you, and you've been through quite a few of these sessions that we've done, similar sessions, so just wrap up what you've heard today if you can. Give me a good soundbite for what you've heard in the last hour.
Okay, you're putting the pressure on here.
No pressure.
Yeah. Anyway, I totally agree on this with crew. I think the crew welfare part will follow the kind of ship's performance part. So when thing improves on that side, it's going to be better for the crew as well. But just for your question, for me to wrap up the day, I mentioned for you that I could potentially use a quote, and I think I actually can use it. So. To me, it's not about technological innovations or that part. That part is in place. This is about the change of mindset. I think that's pretty clear for everyone. So I think I can then use a quote from 1867 from the Norwegian playwright Henrik Ibsen from the play Peer Gynt. To think it, wish it, even want it, but to do it, that I cannot understand. So I think it's time for action now.
Brilliant. Well, thank you to all our panelists. Thank you to Inmarsat for sponsoring this. There is lunch is served next door, and then at 2 o'clock the forum proper starts. Anyway, thank you very much everyone for lots of great questions. Keep these ideas, comments, questions coming in the next part of the show. Thank you.